Hello everyone, this is part 2 of our finale. Now in the last video I showed you how to set things up initially. We learned about Kubernetes, Grafana, ArgoCD, and Prometheus. This time we are going to deploy with ArgoCD. In this video I'll show you how to set things up with ArgoCD. So let's get started. Let's begin. Now, in order to get things started, I have two YAML files under the ArgoCD directory. One is called LED, the other one is called ArgoCD Service Node Port. In order to be able to access our application, we need to create a node port. And the node port is necessary so that we can forward to a different port number. And I'll show you what I mean. Here we have the file. So we have the version 1 for API, the service is kind, and then our labels are server, ArgoCD server, which is part of ArgoCD. Our name is ArgoCD server node port. The namespace is going to be ArgoCD. Then the ports will be at 80 for HTTP. Then 8080, which will be the target. Then we will use port 30007 for this. Now we can also use HTTPS, which is at port 443. And we will be using port 30008. Now, we could use either one. I'm going to use 30007 as that's the one I've used mostly. And the selector is ArgoCD server, and our type is node port. Now, once we have it running, we then have to get this. This is our main application. Here we have our API version. Our kind is called application. In our metadata, we have the name as LED monitoring. The namespace is ArgoCD. Then we have the namespace as default. Then we have the server. Project is default. Our path is Kubernetes, which is from our main directories I'll show you. And then there's our website here, which is cloud native. This is the URL for the repo. The target revision is head, and we have a sync policy. So if we click back here, here we have the Kubernetes manifest. Let's talk about it. Yes, it's the same name, but I have to keep that in consideration. So here we have our API version, our deployment, which is the kind here. So this is our deployment. We need to add these annotations. So our scrape will be set to true. Our path is metrics. Our port is called LED port. Our name is LED monitoring. We're using Prometheus as the release. And again, our name is LED monitoring. We have one replica. You can add as many as you want. We have the same name as there. We have the same name for the app. And our containers will be LED monitoring. We have our image here with latest. And our image pull policy will always be always. And then an LED port here, which is port 5000. And then we have our service, which has our name as LED monitoring, as well as our app. Again, 5000 is our port. LED port is the name. It's a load balancer. You can always change this. And then we need a service monitor in order to scrape our application. So here we have the name, our namespace, which is monitoring, our app, our release. And then we have our endpoints, which is LED monitoring. Our path is metrics. And we're going to give the interval at 15 seconds. You can always change this. And our match names will be at default. So, in order to get this running, we will have to do this through the terminal. So here we are. I increased the font size. So first, let's deploy the service port. So we'll do kubectl apply f ArgoCD service node port. And it's created it. So we'll go to kubectl get svc and ArgoCD. And there it is. So it's ready to go, and we are good to go. Now, before we can do this, we need to set up our password. Now, remember in our scripts, so I'll show you again in our scripts. Now, we are going to Documents, this directory here. Then we'll go to Scripts, and then we'll go to here, ArgoCD install. We're going to open with text editor, and as you can see here, let me just increase Actually, I'll leave the font size like this. So we need to run this code. Now, however, I don't want to show this password here, so I will do this off screen, and then we'll get started with ArgoCD. Alright folks, so here is ArgoCD. Now if you're wondering how I did it, I ran the main script, so the last part of the script here, got a password, then I ran this kubectl port forward svc ArgoCD server node port using 30007 at port 80 in ArgoCD, and it's running just fine. Then I use localhost 30007, and it says no applications yet. Create new application. Now to log in, just log in as admin, and then whatever password you get, copy it and then paste it to password, and there you go. Now I'd suggest you save that password somewhere secure, but you can always run it again if you want a different password. So now let us run this application. So we'll go back to the terminal. Now I'm going to create another terminal here. So we're going to now run LED. So let me just increase the text, the size, so there we go. So we'll do ls again. So we'll do kubectl apply f led YAML. So let us go here. We click on here and it says it's out of sync. Alright, so we'll click on sync. And as you can see, it noticed our GitHub repo here. Now, if you have a different GitHub, it will tell you here. So we'll synchronize. If we get an error, we can always go back to the repo, which I have here, and we can change anything that needs to be done. Now, here's what's happening. We have here is we have a pod that's being created here. We have the deploy that's being created here. It says here kind deployment, namespace default, and as you can see, we also have a service monitor here, and we have our endpoints here. We have an endpoint slice, and we have our replica set. So this is more of a sort of like a chart showing our cluster running, and as you can see, this shows that the sync is okay. Now if you're wondering, okay, why does it say progressing? Well, it's because I'm using kind. So if we go here, we do kubectl get deploy, we see now it's available. Well, let's do po, which is pod, and it's running. Okay, so what about svc? What is that? So we'll go to svc, and it is at port 5000. Now it says pending, and the reason for that is because I'm using kind. If I was using K3s, it wouldn't even have this. So it's at port 5000, but it's also using port 31962, but we're going to use port 5000. And it's as load balancer. Of course, I could change this to cluster IP if I wished. So let's run it. To run the application, we'll do kubectl apply port forward svc led monitoring, and then we'll do 5000. Now let's go to localhost 5000, which is here. So localhost, sorry, this is from another application I had done, and there we go. So I'm going to run it again, and yes, I know you can't see it, but the LED is working properly, and the application is now working. However, we still aren't done yet, because in the last part, we are going to see if Prometheus is properly scraping the application, and then we will create a dashboard using Grafana as well as PromQL. So, see you next time.